Hello, garden friends. Today is a very special episode. We are going to take a little trip over to my dad's special cottage garden. And I have never filmed his garden before, so this will be a really special one. I have always loved gardening my entire life, even before I had the ability and the property and the skills to do so. I've always just really loved experimenting, and I've always loved nature. So blend those two things together and you have a garden. I inherited that love and passion from my biological father, and it was always a joy to go visit him and see him gardening in his suit. He'd be all ready to go to business meetings, and he would be gardening all dressed up in nice clothing with just looking all dapper and ready to do business. But he's out there in the garden weeding and watering and all that good stuff. My dad's health has declined over the last decade. He has Parkinsonism, and so we're getting closer and closer now. It's getting really sad, but I have a really uplifting video here because my sister and my stepmom have actually revitalized the garden space. So it was really sad to see his beautiful English garden, going into disrepair, just, going a little wild and not being what it used to be. And it's so exciting for me. Honestly, it's very therapeutic and healing to see them doing something really special with that space. I think you're going to really love seeing my dad's cottage garden and all the work my sister and my stepmom have put into it with all their love and care. Really shows their sweet personalities, and they're both caregivers to my dad. So I'm just really inspired and comforted by the love they put into his garden. This is a really special property. It's actually a couple hundred years old. It was built, the buildings on the property were built in the 1800s. The stones and the bricks were actually shipped in from England in the 1800s. So it's a very special building. Now, the building to us might look kind of fancy, to me anyways. I think it looks really fancy and like high end and everything. But these were actually the living quarters for a very wealthy family's landscaper and gatekeeper. So it was for the servant quarters, which I think is really interesting. But these were the servant quarters, and my dad actually and my stepmom, when they first got together, they purchased this property for like $125,000. It was insanely cheap at the time. It was, it was okay, but it was a pretty good deal because it was actually in really bad shape at the time. The backyard had railroad tracks through it, gravel everywhere. Nothing had been updated for probably 50 years. So they came in and they did a lot of work over the years, lots of money invested into it, lots of refinancing in order to get the money to fix it up, and they just did a beautiful job. This is it's like a love project of love. My dad really had all these ideas of what he wanted it to be, and he really made it happen. It was expensive and everything. He put everything he made into the home and the life that they had together. But I think it was such a beautiful investment of his time and effort to make that property really shine again. It was definitely a labor of love. He always had a real interest in poetry and art as well, and culture and history, and he was always been an avid gardener. He even, for the time that he was married to my mom, was a farmer. Yeah, so it's kind of like, whoa, extreme business versus homesteading. But actually, so that was the life we were going to have, but things didn't quite work out. my dad started setting up his garden here, he actually made the raised garden beds using brick. And so they're about, I'd say about a foot or so off the ground. And it really does give, even just a foot off the ground, really does give you a great advantage with raised bed gardening. Now, if you're trying to make it more ergonomic for yourself, a foot off the ground might not be as deep as you want it to be. You might want to go a little bit further than that. But for the perks of the soil quality and everything, about a foot is as much as you really need to be above the ground, because you still have the soil underneath that level. So that it does help a little bit with like your back and stuff like that, but mostly it's for soil quality. One of the smartest things my dad did when he got his little garden together was to kind of map out the perimeter of the space, and he lined that with fruit trees. You can see there that we did a little bit of harvesting some red or purple plums. They're a little overripe, but that makes them even sweeter. I saw some immature apples. They weren't definitely not ripe yet. And there were blackberries and raspberries. And then my stepmother actually planted a whole patch of strawberries, which I could see they were vining out all over the place, trying to send runners. And that's a really great way to get free plants. If this was my garden, I would take little pots with soil, and I would place them wherever I saw the runners. Just put the runner on the soil, possibly put a rock or something to weight it so they would stay in that spot. Sometimes I'll put a handful of soil and put it over the actual runner itself, not the plant, just the little umbilical cord like thing. And that actually helps to weigh it down so that the plant is in contact with soil and it will send down its roots. Rhubarb plants were not very red, but they were very massive, so that was really cool to see. I actually grow rhubarb from the crowns, but I also grow them from seeds, which is a much slower process. If you want to see any videos on that, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Make a comment below if you'd like to see me growing some rhubarb from seed. I actually have thousands of rhubarb seeds. So quite often rhubarb crowns are, first of all, very expensive nowadays, and they will sell out. So you might be paying $20 or more for just one plant. But if you know somebody with plants and they let any of them go, you might get some seeds. Our plants actually produce thousands of seeds. So if you have a friend who has a mother plant that has big stalk growing out of it with lots of seeds on it, talk to them. You want to make sure that you get them mature, but they do sprout very readily. The only thing is, you will be waiting before you have a harvest. It will probably be several years before you get that plant to be big enough to actually have a harvest. But the genetic diversity is amazing, and you literally get those plants practically for free or for pennies on the dollar in comparison with buying the crowns. I saw weeds in the garden, but they are my favorite kind of weeds. Did you see them? Do you recognize what they are? I talk about them all the time. It's purslane. It's actually one of the most nutritious plants you can grow, and I grow it on purpose, but my family has it growing as a weed, and I told my sister, this is nutritious. If you tell my stepmom, who is a nurse, if you tell her how nutritious this is, she will not want to throw this away. It's really high in omega-3 fatty acids. It's one of the best, if not the best, plant on land with omega-3s. So it's purslane. In my husband's culture, they call it verlaga, and in other countries, they actually sell purslane like in markets. Like, it's a big thing. They're in big bundles, and people will eat this like in stir-fried with eggs and things like that. I like to eat it raw. That's my preference. It's just tangy. It kind of just hits, the flavor profile is really interesting. Tangy and lemony. It kind of gives that oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's like a lemon. It's like a little zing, and I really, really enjoy it. So I actually ate some right in front of my sister. I wanted her to like go, oh yes, that is edible, and so she knows now that weed is not a weed. It's desirable. There are cultivated varieties that are much more bushier and produce a lot more. If you don't like the way it's sprawling on the ground, you can go for one of those upright varieties that has been basically, chosen over and over again, cultivated to have the upright look. It looks less like a weed, but it is still the same plant. It's just been cultivated, right? Garden is so charming. I just absolutely love it. I love the infrastructure of the brick garden beds and the water feature that doesn't have any water in it, but that's okay. You don't want to get stagnant with mosquitoes and so forth. So if you can't handle all the water, you don't have to always have it going. If this was my garden space, I would get a solar fountain going, something small enough that you can like handle washing it and maintaining it and so forth. But a little solar fountain in that middle space would be so, so cool. This is so beautiful. Amongst the flowers, I did see nasturtiums. I told my stepmom before that I really love nasturtiums. They actually have a really peppery flavor. I enjoy watching them more than I like eating them, but I do eat them because I know that it has to have a lot of nutritional value that we don't get in our modern day diets. So the flowers are edible and the leaves are edible. And actually I've heard that you can actually kind of like pickle the seed pods. It's supposed to be like, I can't think of it. There's capers. It's supposed to be like capers. So I don't really like those, but if you do, you can pickle the seed pods. The seeds. I actually like to keep the seeds. Like I said, I'm a seed addict. I love growing seeds, and so it's really hard for me to destroy it. To destroy a seed, it's difficult. The red or purple plum tree was actually loaded with fruit, so much so that the whole tree was bowing down. It was so loaded with fruit, so my sister got a big Ziploc baggie and I filled up enough fruit for my entire family for several days or even a week. So I'm also going to try planting the pits and see if I can get any of those to sprout. The blackberries were so good. The first one was tart, the second one was sweet. And it's kind of like a Sour Patch Kid. First they're sour, then they're sweet. Before I left, I had to span over to the front, the other side of the house, because I wanted to show you the fig tree. The fig tree is actually, I've taken mini cuttings from it before. And I have some fig trees on my property now in this land that actually has grown from cuttings from that tree. Also, when I taught gardening classes, I took so many cuttings that every single one of my students, that is over 150 students, got to plant a fig tree and take it home. And I did that for like, I think 2 years, where I did 150 kids each. I also offered some to my colleague for some of his students. And then when I taught gardening classes specifically, not just science, I'd give out like one per kid, and that'd be like 25 or 30 kids at a time. And every single kid got to go home with a fig tree. I don't know what variety of fig tree it is, but I'm guessing it's brown turkey or possibly the Olympia fig. It is very productive and it grows lots of foliage. It's actually been pruned back heavily multiple times, and every time there's a pruning, I call up my stepmom and I'm like, hey, if you're going to be pruning it soon, can you let me know and I'll come and get all of the branches. And I basically take almost all the branches and I propagate most of them. There are some that are too huge for me to take, but anything that's bigger than the width of a pencil up to maybe the width of like a hammer, I take those and I propagate them. I don't know what variety of fig tree it is, but I'm guessing it's brown turkey or possibly the Olympia fig. It is very productive and it grows lots of foliage. It's actually been pruned back heavily multiple times, and every time there's a pruning, I call up my stepmom and I'm like, hey, if you're going to be pruning it soon, can you let me know and I'll come and get all of the branches. And I basically take almost all the branches and I propagate most of them. There are some that are too huge for me to take, but anything that's bigger than the width of a pencil up to maybe the width of like a hammer, I take those and I propagate them. One thing I would do different would be to make sure the soil is covered. I know some people really like it tidy, and my stepmom is a great housekeeper. Everything's always neat and tidy and organized and just beautiful and, like, I would say perfect, but she's too humble to say that. But the garden is very clean and orderly. I'm a little bit of a chaos. I'm kind of like the Tasmanian devil when it comes to a garden. It's like woo, everything everywhere. But I think it really is important to cover the soil. I'm constantly picking leaves for my cherry trees or for my laurel or whatever I have, and I will just put them on top of the soil. I'll take spent flowers, if I'm deadheading flowers, which I have a hard time deadheading things. But if it's a type of flower that grows better with deadheading, then I will do it. Otherwise, I like to get the seeds. So I'm a seed addict. So I will pick the flowers and I'll actually just kind of mulch around my garden area so that the soil is never really bare. And that's important for soil microbes, worms, and all of that. It keeps the soil from being bleached out by the sun. If you look at the soil, if you leave it really bare in the summer, the top like couple inches will get really sandy, dried out. It will stop being able to hold on to water very well. It's basically dying. So you want to keep your soil covered up. Now over by the squash that they have running all over, the squash leaves do a good job of that, kind of shading the soil, keeping it cooler and so forth. But like even if you're pruning off the leaves, just mulch it down underneath, and that really is very helpful. Some people don't like the way that looks. So if that's the case, maybe having a mulch that all looks kind of the same would kind of keep things tied together, because I know that the idea here is that they want to keep it looking clean and orderly, not chaos. So for that style, what I've done before in the past, if I wanted like a planter or something to look like all the same on top, I would actually buy, I know this is kind of like a waste of money, but I would buy like the chips, like the wood chips for like guinea pigs and rabbit cages, which are actually not good for them. And I would use that if I was desperate for material, or I would get a chip drop, which can give you way too much more than you want. You might not be prepared for a truckload of wood chips, but having something on the soil is really important. It doesn't have to be chaotic, like my style is chaos, but you want to have something on top of the soil. It will keep the soil healthy over time. It'll minimize the inputs that you have to put into your property as well. A lot of people spend a lot of money on NPK, getting the 10-10-10 or the 5-5-5, nitrogen and so forth. But you will spend way less on your garden if you actually mulch or chop and drop compost in place. That is really good for the soil. You can even dig a little bit in, dig a little bit down, put down some compost and cover it up. That also works. When I talk about chop and drop, this is what I'm talking about. I actually prune some flowers and I just tuck it around here underneath. You want to keep the soil covered as much as you can. And you can see again here by my echinacea, I've got some down, whatever I have, like even spent seed pods. Now there's always the off chance that I might actually be accidentally planting some lupin here, and I don't care if I accidentally plant some lupin or some lavender or whatever I'm chopping and dropping over here. That's fine. I'll just pick it up and move it somewhere else. So I'm trying to incorporate some of my dad's style in here, even though my style is generally chaotic. I hope you enjoyed going around my dad's cottage garden, and I mean it was his by design, but it's really my stepmom's and my sister's now, and they've done a really beautiful job of planting their squash and their strawberries and the rhubarb and peas, and my sister's really getting into it now, and she is seeing the benefit and how therapeutic it is and how it makes you feel healthy. It gets you outside, it helps you to connect with nature, and so they're really starting to see the benefits of gardening. I hope to continue to foster that in my family and to it's kind of contagious. Try to spread this as much as I can. I hope you are doing that same thing. If you're really getting into gardening, which if you watch this long in the video, you must be, I really hope that you'll share this passion with your loved ones as much as that they'll accept you to keep talking about it. You know, it's like for the last time, like, can I talk to you about my lettuce today? Like they might at some point say, can we talk about something else? But go ahead, share that passion. I think it's a really healthy thing to do. You are blessing your loved ones by sharing your garden produce and your passion for this. So hopefully you enjoyed my dad's cottage garden. It's very different from my chaos that you see here, but it's absolutely beautiful. And I do want to incorporate more and more of what he loves in the space that I have. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and like I always say, be good, be sweet, and grow a garden if you want to eat. I'll see you next time.